Hello everyone, today we're going to be describing the shape of a histogram. A histogram can be described in three different ways. You could be either skewed to the left, you could be skewed to the right, or you could have a normal distribution. We're going to go over all three of these things in this video. Let's start with a normal distribution. So this histogram here would be a great example of a histogram that has a normal distribution. The reason that we say that this has a normal distribution is the fact that if we were to draw a line that best fits our data, as you can see in this picture, what I've drawn, that it looks kind of like a bell.
I thought we were talking about the shapes of graphs, Mr. Peterson. Why are you talking about bells? Because that's what people use to describe a normal distribution. It's called a bell-shaped curve.
So if we take a look at the way that this bell looks, it starts on the left side at the bottom, it slowly goes up to the top where it reaches its peak, and it goes back on the other side in the exact same way that it went up on the other side. So let's take a look at this bell. And back to our graph, and back to the bell, and back to our graph. And then we look at the bell on top of our graph, and we can see kind of the similarities on how this graph kind of follows that bell-shaped curve. So we can say that this graph has a normal distribution. Remember that. It looks like a bell-shaped curve. We could also say that it's symmetric, meaning that one side of the data looks like the other side of the data if we were to cut it in half and fold it over. Let's go ahead and talk about when the distribution of a histogram is skewed to the left. Here is an example of a histogram that is skewed to the left or skewed left, however you want to say it. We can see in this histogram that we do not have a bell-shaped curve this time. When we draw that line that best fits the data, our data trails off to the left-hand side, meaning that there is less of it over to the left. Finally, let's take a look at a histogram that is skewed right. Here is a histogram that is skewed to the right. You can see it's the opposite of being skewed to the left. And when we draw a line that best fits our data, we can see that it slopes down to the right-hand side, and less of our data is down there on the bottom right, saying that it slopes off to the right-hand side, skewed to the right. And there you have it, the three different distributions of a histogram. So here's a quick recap that you could place into your notes about the shapes of distributions. Number one, you have the bell-shaped curve or a normal distribution. We could also call this symmetric. Number two, it could be skewed to the left. The data tapers off or tails off to the left-hand side. I always think about, what if I poured a glass of water on this? Which way would it flow? Well, if I poured it on number two, or graph number two that's skewed to the left, the water would flow to the left. The graph number three, or the histogram that would be on number three, is skewed to the right. It tails off to the right-hand side, or it tapers off to the right-hand side. If I were to pour a glass of water on that, it would flow to the right.